So these are the relevant classes of permits that you can apply for if you want to work and live in Kenya. So in my case, there was actually only one class of permit which was of high interest, which is the Class G investors visa, because foreign nationals like me who want to run and own a company in Kenya are required to have an investors Class G visa from the immigration department. However, as I said before, to qualify for this class of visa, you need to have a minimum of 100,000 US dollar on your Kenyan bank account, which I didn't have. So the big question here is, can you still register a company in Kenya and apply for a work and residence permit without having 100,000 US dollar on your bank account? And the answer is yes. It was my first time entering Kenya as a Kenyan resident, and let me tell you something, fam. The feeling of queuing up in the line for Kenyan residents as opposed to queuing up in the line for visitors felt like the biggest flex in my life. I was so happy, I was so proud. I felt like I win the lottery. No, for real, I love to call myself a Kenyan resident. I love this country, I love the people. So yeah, I wish everyone else in the diaspora to have this feeling of coming home. It's so beautiful. So here we are, and I will explain the entire process, how much time it took me, how much money I spent. So make sure you stick to the end, and let's dive straight into it. Now, if you want to reside and work in Kenya, you obviously need a permit to do so, like for any other country too. And there are different ways of acquiring Kenyan residency. One, for instance, is through marriage. However, I am going to focus on the residency acquired through work or investment. Depending on the type of work you plan to do or the sector you want to invest in Kenya, there are different classes of permits. And so let me just give you a brief overview of the relevant classes of permits. The Class A visa, for instance, is given to individuals who come to Kenya for prospecting or mining. And to do so, you need to have a license to mine in Kenya.
So I think there's a big problem, and I think this problem needs to be addressed accordingly. You know, there's a problem of African Americans moving back to Africa, particularly in the country of Kenya. You know, in as much as many African Americans are moving or choose their preference with Ghana, there's also some problems with Ghana. African countries are having their own personal problems. Problems that are only unique to those countries. For instance, if we go to Ghana, we have the problem of overpricing. Things are really expensive in Ghana, and this is because we have a lot of Black Americans in Ghana, and this has really made the economy of the country become so high. You see, another thing is Tanzania. Tanzania, since the death of the president John Pombe Magufuli, it is said and it is believed that African Americans are having a hard time because the African people have tended to change their own ways. You see, because their leader died, so they are also not really accommodating, they are not really welcoming. Magufuli had socialist idea, he was a very welcoming person, and Black Americans are thinking, since Magufuli died, Africans are not welcoming over there because the problems that are only faced by African Americans in that country, it includes police brutality, they are being chased out of place, the people are not friendly. In Kenya, we have problems with legalities, we have problems with acquiring papers and this and that. Yeah, Kenya is one of the most corrupt countries in Africa. Yes, yes. My country is one of the most corrupt countries in Africa, and truth be told, it's true. However, there are some things you need to carry forward. You have to be transparent when you're doing your paperwork. You have to know where and when and how to do things. Many Africans have been asking me about acquiring citizenship, acquiring residency. Before you acquire residency, before you acquire citizenship, you have to acquire a certain permit called residency permit. Right now, Kenya is visa free, but we have some payment that you still have to pay. Okay, what are some of these things that African Americans need to do in order for them to come to Africa, Kenya to be specific, and have a stay? African Americans who are looking forward to moving to Africa, Kenya, sorry, what should they do, and how is it that you can acquire these papers? How can you acquire residency? How can you acquire your land? How can you acquire a place where you can call your home? So in today's video, an interesting Black American girl was able to share her thoughts about how she acquired land in Kenya, how she bought her house, and how she found residency. The most important thing here is residency, because if you are not a resident, you can't really do all this. So we are going to listen to what the sister is going to say, and then by the end of the video, I will share with you my critical thought and analysis.
Which is given to individuals who want to work in the field of agriculture or animal husbandry. And to qualify for this visa, you also need to prove that you have the necessary capital to afford or buy a land in Kenya. If you need a standard employment visa, then the Class D visa is probably the best option for you. And it is also the most common visa. With this visa, you are entitled to work for any company or even for the Kenyan government. Next in line, we have the specific trade, business and consultancy visa, also known as the Class G visa. The Class G visa is given to individuals who want to work and invest into any field of the Kenyan economy. However, to qualify for the Class G visa, you need to prove a minimum capital of $100,000 on your bank account. Last but not least, there is also the Class I visa, which is given to individuals who enter Kenya for charitable or religious purposes. And here also, to qualify for this visa, you have to prove that your activities will be beneficial for the country. So these are the relevant classes of permits that you can apply for if you want to work and live in Kenya. So in my case, there was actually only one class of permit which was of high interest, which is the Class G investors visa, because foreign nationals like me who want to run and own a company in Kenya are required to have an investors Class G visa from the immigration department. However, as I said before, to qualify for this class of visa, you need to have a minimum of $100,000 on your Kenyan bank account, which I didn't have. So the big question here is, can you still register a company in Kenya and apply for a work and residence permit without having $100,000 on your bank account? And the answer is yes. But you need to find a trustworthy local business partner with whom you can register your company, and you need an exceptional lawyer who knows all the loopholes in the legal system. So obviously, before applying for any of those visas mentioned before, you need to register a company in Kenya. But you know what is the best part about it? You don't even have to travel to Kenya to register a company. You can do it completely online. Foreign nationals who want to register a company in Kenya are requested to do so via the website eCitizen, on which you can then obtain all the documents for your company registration, fill them out and submit them. So technically you can do the entire process on your own. All you need to do so is your passport, and you are good to go to register your company as a sole director, sole shareholder. And yeah, you know, it is very important that you comply with the Kenyan laws and regulations. And on top of that, you know, the entire application process can be lengthy, complicated. So I wanted to have expert assistance to avoid the chances of rejection after a lot of effort, money and energy has been put into the process. Now the question is, how long did it take me from the moment of registering my company up to the approval of my Kenyan residency? So I started the entire process of company registration and visa application with the help of my lawyer based in Nairobi in February this year. And it was finalized by the end of April, beginning of May. So that was when I traveled to Nairobi to submit my fingerprints. This was also a crazy story. The effort it took me to reach Nairobi was crazy. It really seemed like it was not meant to be at the beginning. Let me quickly tell you this story. So I first visited Kenya in the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, shortly before the corona pandemic broke out. And I took a trip with my kids from Addis Ababa to Mombasa. And at that time, German citizens and passport holders like me were allowed to enter Nairobi and Kenya in general with a visa on arrival. So me in my mind, when I was traveling to Nairobi this year, was still having the information that I can get a visa on arrival. Man, I was so wrong. I booked a flight with Turkish Airlines, went to the airport in Germany, and was not allowed to board the plane because I didn't have an A visa. So before you enter Kenya, before you, 3 days before you enter Kenya, you must minimum 3 days before apply for the E visa. Otherwise, you will not be able to board the plane. It was a horrible experience. I think in all these years that I'm traveling, it was the first time that something like this happened to me. But the good thing was that Turkish Airlines, kudos, this video is not sponsored by Turkish Airlines, but let me give them their props that they deserve. So they were so kind to let me rebook my flight for free. And so I scheduled my flight for 3 days later and returned to the airport with an A visa. With the help of my lawyer, I was able to get it within 24 hours. I tell you, fam, having a great lawyer is key. And so I went back to the airport with my approved E visa, just to be turned back again because the plane was overbooked. It was too full. And this time I got a compensation of €600 and was able to take my flight 2 days later. I was shaking when I arrived at the airport for the third time, but we give thanks and praise to God. I was able to board my plane and finally fly and reach Nairobi. And you know what is the absolutely craziest thing? On my way back to Germany, the plane was overbooked again and I got another compensation. Anyway, on this trip, I was able to finalize the entire company registration process and I got my Kenyan residency endorsed. All of that within 3 months. And a few weeks later, I had to take a flight from the island of Zanzibar, where I travel to regularly, to Kenya, to Nairobi. And it was my first time entering Kenya as a Kenyan resident. And let me tell you something, fam. The feeling of queuing up in the line for Kenyan residents, as opposed to queuing up in the line for visitors, felt like the biggest flex in my life. I was so happy. I was so proud. I felt like I win the lottery. No, for real. I love to call myself a Kenyan resident. I love this country. I love the people. So yeah, I wish everyone else in the diaspora to have this feeling of coming home. It's so beautiful. And yeah, so now to the question, how much money did I spend? So the entire process, including legal fees, costed me around $7,000.
Yes, it is important that we listen to such people who have had their experiences and how they have acquired this residency. You see, when you've not still made the step of moving back to Africa, you'll still be living in the bubble that it is impossible. You'll still be living in the comfort that maybe the United States is providing you with, the comfort of familiarity. We shouldn't be too familiar to something and form a comfort zone, because the comfort zone is something that will always be making us blind to opportunities that might avail themselves. Right now, it is an opportunity that the current president of Kenya has allowed visa-free entry into the country. You only need to pay for what we call the ETA, Electronic Transfer Authority. I don't know what it is really, but forgive me for that. Now, moving to Africa is a bold step that you need to make. That's it. Of course, you need to have some amount in your bank to show that you can really sustain yourself in the country. You need to prove that you want to go away. You want to go along borrowing money from Africans, because the Kenyan country or the Kenyan government expect that you are able to sustain yourself, and if it's good, you are also able to invest in the country. So investment capital is something which is also true. You need to prove that you can sustain yourself. That's another thing. The residency permit and all these require a few amount of money. So after you've lived for some time, then you can be able to acquire the citizenship, which I think it's okay, because life in Africa is way cheaper than compared to the United States of America. The United States of America, life might be real hard, you know, the standard of living is so high. I'm told that a one-bedroomed house will go for like $1,000. $1,000 is a lot of money, because the standard one-bedroomed house here in Kenya is about 15 to 20,000 Kenya shillings. That is the standard, well equipped, new and modern. You know, that's a really nice house, you know. But in the United States, for 15,000 Kenya shillings equivalent of US dollar, it's nothing. It's like a one-day food for one day, you know. It's nini. So moving to Africa offers you more gain than it really appears that you are going from a faraway place. The only thing that is quite expensive there is the air ticket. And so about the challenges, I think challenges are just everywhere in the world. Challenges are just everywhere. But I love Africa because of this. Africa life is cheaper. We will see, for a black person, we don't really have that bad kind of police brutality we have in the United States. We don't have police looking for African Americans or racially profiling people. We don't have that here. The only places we have racial discrimination here in Kenya, I will say the truth for what it is in the ghettos. In the ghettos, the police are not really friendly to the young youth who are living in the ghettos, because these youth have also proven not to be trusted. The other day I was traveling, and while traveling I saw there was jam, and the person ahead of me was driving with his windows open. So I saw a team of like 5 boys. They were sitting along the highway. I think they were hawkers. One just came. I thought one was coming to greet or sell something to the driver. He came and snatched his phone and just kept running slowly by slowly. Imagine stealing from a driver who is driving. You are almost risking your life. These young men have also been stealing from houses. They are robbing people, stabbing people, shooting people. These are things that are making police to be not so friendly to these young men in the ghettos. And these ghettos include Kibera slum, we have Korogocho slum, we have Dandora slum. These are places which are not really friendly. You see, even where I was brought up was kind of ghetto, but we didn't have that kind of crime, you know. So these are some of the things that might qualify to be called police brutality, but not to the level of the United States of America. You know, the level of United States of America is even international. See what happened to George Floyd. See what happened to other black people. There's so many people, I can't name them all. So we can't deny the fact that there's police brutality in USA, and that the need for African Americans to move back to Africa, it's really, really calling, and it's really, really immediate. African Americans should do quick into moving back to the continent. At least save whatever humanity is left inside of you, and you live in Africa. Africa is better, way better. You might not face racism as here in Africa. The other day in South Africa, we saw a brother who was racially profiled by a Chinese shop owner. They told him, we don't sell to black people. And that's South Africa. A Chinese is racially profiling an African American in South Africa, that we don't sell to black people. And it's a black man's land. The audacity is also on another level. As I told you, every country have challenges, but Africa is way better. Africa is way cheaper. Deep inside, you always listen to that voice of moving to Africa. It's time you listen to that voice and make the bold move of moving back to Africa and doing the right thing that you need to do, which is living your life peacefully until the day that God says, enough is enough, and welcome back my daughter, welcome back my son. Yeah, Africa is way better, trust me. So that's all for today. I hope you subscribe to the channel, support me on Patreon, or give the video super things. It really helps me, it motivates me to bring you more videos. So see you in the next one.